Hi, Abu-Bakr. I just wondered if you could tell me a little bit about your academic background.
Okay, I'm an educational consultant. I'm also a historian. I specialize in Black and African history. And my training at Cardiff University as an undergraduate student was in psychology, sociology, anthropology, child development, research methods, and social theory. My postgraduate qualification was in education, and part of my specialism with that was looking at mental health issues, looking at disruptive behavioral disorders and learning difficulties in pupils and students, which encompass dyslexia, dyspraxia, hyperlexia, and dyscalculia. So that's just a general summary of my academic background.
Just a general summary. That's amazing. When did you start your academic career? When did it all begin?
Well, it basically started off, I think the seed was planted in 1991, because what was happening during the time that Britain, as well as other European countries, was celebrating the quincentenary celebration of 500 years of their success, or after they defeated the Moors in 1492. And obviously, it opened up the likes of Christopher Columbus and Balboa and Cortes and all those conquistadores, to the Caribbean islands. And obviously, most of the Moors, which were actually in Spain at the time, was brought over to the Caribbean islands. They accompanied the likes of Christopher Columbus, and that was the beginning of the slave trade. Now, I was trying to protest against it because I can never understand how come they would have these annual celebrations or yearly celebrations of the abolition of the slave trade, the abolition of slavery, but yet they wanted to do a global celebration of the inception of slavery and the destruction of Native American culture and civilization. So
Wow.
this is what really got me into the flow of things. I then found out I had difficulties reading and writing because I was deliberately put into the remedial class, so I didn't learn anything for those 5 years while I was at secondary school. So that's when my journey basically started, doing my ABCs, one, two, threes. Made sure I went into night school from 1992 right up until maybe a few years ago. So I've studied for well over 20 odd years.
Wow. So you're definitely well qualified then to take the mantle and the place at the table regarding the curriculum.
Yeah, definitely, because it's been something I was arguing about while I was at school or in school, something which I was doing, something I was arguing about in college as well. And I did see a reflection of it when I was doing my access course. I started my access course in 2001 to
Mm-hmm.
2004. And part of my interdisciplinary study and part of the history program on the access course, we were looking at the civil rights movement, which was okay. It was a form of Black history. It didn't focus on Britain in any way at all. So that was the first time I was actually exposed to a Black, curriculum, educational syllabus within the educational system in Wales between that time. And then I went down to the History and Arts Centre, I think it was about 2001. And it was when the History and Arts Centre put on the Windrush generation, their transportation to this country, and I was touched by some of the images. And I made an oath to myself that I would take up the banner and make sure that I would push the contribution, the achievements, and the accomplishments of Black people, and to ensure that those West Indies or African Caribbeans would still have some sort of legacy coming from me when I went on to my lecture tours. So that's when it really began for me.
Yeah, wow, that's an amazing journey you've had, and your brain must be just exploded. I've been studying for the last 6 years in uni, but more focused on inequality in the last 2 years. But my head feels like it's going to blow up. So I don't know what yours feels like.
Ready to explore with information in a positive way, just to let it
Yeah,
out. What it's
yeah,
like when you're taking so much, you have to
mm,
relieve it or release it in some way
yeah.
through so discussions, etc., with me through presentations or discourse. So
Yeah.
I've read over 5,000 books in that short space of time.
Oh my
So
word.
I've made sure that I try to specialize in as much different disciplines as possible to look at the Black and the African experience, over the centuries from the beginning of time right to the contemporary. So I really
Yeah.
took, because there was a deficit or deficiency as far as I was concerned of the
Hmm.
amount of Black people, Black and brown people that were not in particular fields. There was no psychologist, economist locally or nationally
Yeah.
in these fields. So I took upon myself to try to fill all these things as much as possible. So our people had a narrative in each one of these subjects at least.
Yeah. Yeah. And more of an authentic narrative, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, from a bottom-up perspective, from a
Mm,
grassroots perspective, because unfortunately, most of our narrative is being controlled and written, by Europeans, during that
yeah.
500-year period. So it was a way of trying to ensure that our narrative would come out, a more authentic understanding to the state of why we're in what we're in today, and obviously trying to understand what we had gone through in the past.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you said that, you've qualified yourself in all these areas as an adult, and you say that you had trouble in school. And, the statistics tell us the Black males in particularly have real issues within school. They're disproportionately excluded. That's been the same kind of narrative since the 50s. They kind of not listened to, they get put in isolation a lot more, they get suspended and, expelled a lot more. Do you think then maybe maybe the landscape in the future could change then if there was more engaging an engaging curriculum for them and more of an understanding as well? Would you think your school experience would be different?
I think my school experience or pupil school experience can be slightly different, but we have to look at history. This is a 500-year process. Why we're in the
Mhm.
situation we get in today. And like I've said in many presentations in the past, we were brought to this country, okay, to work. And the same thing what took place when the British were controlling the Caribbean islands and also North America. So
Yes.
our reality from a historical perspective is that our presence in these countries is to work. And then obviously when there's no work for us, etc., we then become a burden. And then they want to associate with us, welfare and all these other type of things. So we've literally been used in 5 centuries. And that is the reality. And there's a lot of documentation to substantiate that. And this is a narrative we must bring out,
Yeah.
deliver to the dominant culture. But do I have hopes of change? Well, I want to see change because I had I was precocious. I was able to read and write before I went to school in the 1970s, and I was a top of my class. And in those days, Black boys especially, or the Black community, what was known as West Indians at the time, they were known to be academically or educationally subnormal. These are the sort of phrases or terminologies they were using at the time. So when I
Oh.
broke that mold, I was considered a threat by many teachers because
Mm,
you have 3 tiers within school, either above average, average, or below average. I
yeah.
wasn't just above average, I was actually top of my class. So this
Hmm.
literally blew teachers' minds, that this
Yeah.
propaganda of IQ tests, which they were all built, they were all educated to believe in, I didn't fit that mold.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of opposition to my academic progress and development in school. And I think that, and I think when I went to secondary school, deliberately putting me in the remedials was to ensure that I didn't develop any further or I had any future. And there was, it
Mm,
wasn't just me, this was the order of the day within
yeah.
Wales.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had that same experience, even being, I was one of 5 children of colour in the school. And yeah, every single one of us, as far as I remember, were put in remedials. And, I was far from stupid. I was a bright child, and I've definitely developed my academic learning as I've got older. But even as a child, the school kind of put me in a box and just assumed that was as far as I was going to go in life. Yeah, it's crazy, but I love the fact that you came out the other side. Do you think then this studying has helped you kind of find your identity as you've grown as a person, not just academically, but also within yourself and your self-esteem and things like that? Have you found yourself within the books?
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about that, Donna, because my personal experience, I was always trying to look for an identity. Remember, I came from a West Indian community, so they had a colonial education. And the people that came over here, my family came over here originally, well, my grandparents, they came over in the 50s. Then they
Mm.
sent for my parents after working. I was born here. And one of the problems we had as African Caribbean children or a child was that we were not allowed to embrace our so-called West Indian. As our parents used to tell us, you're not West Indian, you're not Jamaican, you're British, you're
Wow.
English. and the English are telling us to get back home. So there was a sense of dislocation from both sides of the culture, you know, from our parents' ethnicity and obviously from the dominant culture. And I think it was because of Rastafari as a movement in the 1970s that gave us that sense of direction, that sense of trajectory, that sense of, you know, connection, you know,
Yeah.
with Africa. And that's how we ended up changing our identity, because up until after the Windrush period, we were all referred to as black. That included Asians. Any person of color was considered black
Yeah.
in those days.
Yeah.
And then what started happening then, by the time the middle 1980s came into the latter part of the 80s, into the 90s, we were then termed African Caribbean. And that was because we wanted to ensure that Africa was part of our identity. And that was only through the rise of Rastafari. Even though our parents, who were West Indian, I'm proud of being West Indian, didn't want to associate with Africa, we did. Even though there was starvation and famine and colonization and all these other type of disastrous elements that was taking place on the continent, we still wanted to embrace that, because, you know, we saw ourselves being part of a global village, you know, an international village, not just some local, you know, entity within the British framework of things.
Yeah. So that's so fascinating. Yeah. I mean, so what do you think then of the BLM movement? Not BLM as an organization, but what do you think of the movements and the protests and everything that's been going on in the last year? Like you said, the Rastafarian kind of shifted a mindset. Do you think that last year's protests and the movement that's continuing is kind of shifting people's ideas?
Well, of course it has. There's no doubt about that, because white people in the West, whether it's in America or Britain, had this belief that racism had ended. You know, we should just get on with things, keep race, you know, let's move forward, let's put race behind us. And the reality is that it never moved on, because Europeans or Caucasians have been telling our narrative. And most of the training programs were actually being sanitized by white trainers who were putting their own people to sleep in the labor market, in the labor sector. This is what was happening. But as far as the Black Lives Movement is concerned, it brought in a new generation. I see it as a springboard from all those other movements that came in the 1970s.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, even though there may have been a social gap, I think it's a continuing tradition whereby people started to wake up to the reality of their state or situation within the country. So it did bring about change, and no one can deny that it was a contributing factor for the curriculum to become mandatory. They had to look at their own past, etc. So it's put me, there's no doubt about it, it's actually put people like myself into the limelight with what I've been trying to say for the last 30 years, which I've never really had a platform to say that. So, you know, and obviously it's for the younger generation now. So I would see myself under those circumstances more as a consultant rather than maybe trying to take it over, because they have the eye for the future, the next generation. And we have to try to understand it from their perspective, but they also need to understand it from ours, you know, from the past and how we got to where we actually are today. So it's been a positive. It's been positive for major changes for the Welsh people, at least, to look at their own monuments, their own past, you know, look at their treatment towards us, and for them to have some element of guilt in order for them to wake up to say, look, racism hasn't ended, it probably will never end. And the fact is they shouldn't sanitize over it as if we should just forget about it, you know, because we're living the experience.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and they're just observers, so they can't be the authors and the narrators of that, you know, of that particular experience.
Well, you've had the pleasure of being involved in the new curriculum 365, which is really exciting. And I just hope that whatever's in the contents of that curriculum is you know, as authentic as it possibly can be, and as raw as it possibly can be, without it being diluted just for the benefit of the other people in the room. You know, this is they're hardcore subjects that we really need to, if we're going to decolonize, we need to completely deconstruct, and we need to start again, I think. What do you think then the future looks like if the classroom life changes in the next 5 years and we really have these stories being told? What do you think the next 5 years in school life could be like for a young person in Wales?
Well, put it this way, one thing that it will do is actually let teachers and pupils within the educational system confront the reality that the global
Mm,
village is much darker than what they would like to perceive. Okay,
yeah,
this is the first thing. And the second thing is that they won't grow up with these cultural incompetence as students or as teachers when they're interacting with people from other groups, because that has been
mhm,
one of the major problems. You know,
right,
they've been very ethnocentric in their approach. They've only seen our connection through European lenses. Anything outside of those parameters or paradigms has been constructed based upon their understanding, not based upon any interactive relationship with us.
yeah,
So the fact of the matter is that they're forced now to look at things from our perspective, because
mhm,
even though they say colonization has ended and enslavement has ended, it's only ended in their minds. And in
mhm,
reality, what this will actually do is say, look, you know, you're now going to have to see us on equal par with yourselves. You know,
yeah,
those days are over. Things are
mhm,
changing. You know, just like Rome. Rome never thought. Greece never thought. Persia never thought. Assyria never thought that they would rise and fall. They all
mm,
fell, and the Western
yeah,
world is falling. And so they're
mhm,
following the same pattern of historical legacies of those people of the past. And there's a
yeah,
saying that those people who don't learn from the past are deemed to repeat it. That's exactly what's happening.
yes. Definitely, definitely. I think so as well. So with the developing the curriculum, were you prepared? I know you've know a lot and you've learned a lot. Were you prepared for what was covered, or did you have to do a lot more research?
I think a bit of both. I think I did research. I looked at it. Looked at it from two perspectives. I looked at it how British people or the Welsh people would have understood it, how they would like to see the curriculum. I would say a large proportion, I don't want to say majority or minority, but a large proportion are totally against it. And I
Mm,
expected that. This is a
okay.
reality. Those who are for it may want to control it to some degree, but I think that, you know, if they are teaching the andragogical perspective, and what I mean by that is that it's driven by students, student centered, then our narrative have to be centered by us. We have to be the presenters and demonstrators of that. So
Hmm.
that lived experience within the classroom setting is understood and connected to by the students immediately. There's not
Hmm.
something which is far-fetched. And I think this is something which is important for us to really recognize that, you know, as so-called Black minority ethnic groups of people living in this country, that we have our own story to tell, and
Yeah,
we can create our own heroes and sheroes for the future. Because that, I
yeah.
think, this is what's missing in the curricular narrative.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the making the black and brown community obsolete and not seeing themselves in the whole historical and also in the future then, isn't it? So I think this is going to be a huge change, and I'm really hoping that, you know, it kind of helps with the identity of our young people, create a better world for the future. You're right. I think that you're definitely right on the younger people being the ones moving this forward. That I think what's happened, I was listening to Michelle Obama the other day, and she said, what's happened is this insurgent of young people is because they've been raised by people like ourselves who have instilled the idea of equity within their upbringing. And now they're having this platform and they're thinking about the way they've been brought up, and they're just getting out there. And I definitely think they're the ones moving it forwards, you know. And it's quite exciting, actually. I'm quite excited to see where we're going to be in the future. Do you think then some of the content may actually induce more racism, for instance? Like, you know, if we cover the topic about human zoos, for instance, you can imagine that children, you know, children being children, not having the intelligence or the language to be able to explain what they're seeing, they could use some of those realities then against their counterparts in the classroom, you know.
I think it could be a two-pronged way. It depends on the sophistication and the
Mm,
dedication by the instructor in this. If it's a
yeah.
teacher, a trainer, a mentor, you know,
Hmm.
advocate, whatever the case may be. And I think that those nightmare realities of, like we talking about human zoos, need to come out. I think
Yeah,
black, you know, as well as white and brown children should know this and know the
definitely.
role that Europeans had put particular people in, to cause the Second World War, because a similar thing took place. They started off with darker skinned people, and then they end up turning in on themselves. That's what the Second World War was about. The Aryan thought it was a superior, the Nordics, and the Alpine groups and the Mediterranean groups were supposed to be the inferior ones. So what they practiced on black and brown people for 400 to 500 years turned it on themselves. And that's the thing. When you plant a seed, it grows. Yeah. Okay. It may bear fruits to a certain time, but if you don't cut away those thorns and thistles, thistles are going to spread out somewhere, and it's going to attack the people who actually instigated that in the first place. So as far as human zoos are concerned, Donna, I think it's something that needs to be realized. It is a touchy subject if you're looking at human zoos and torture and all those sort of things. But I think there has to be a level of sophistication and looking at the learning outcomes. What is the learning outcomes if we're going to teach this to children? What we're trying to establish in them? Are we trying to demean one group who will put in zoos? Or are we trying to elevate another group who would put in the other group in zoos? Or are we actually trying to look at the past, that we need to reconcile with the future so we do not repeat those errors which we carried out before?
Yeah, I mean, I only knew about human zoos about 3 years ago. I had no idea, that existed. I was absolutely horrified. I couldn't believe that happened in a civilized country. It was absolutely ridiculous, and it's very well hidden, And I think science, as science develops, DNA develops, and things like that, we can't hide those things anymore. Science is uncovering so much of what we thought. Back in the day, someone, they say his history, isn't it? His story, sorry. So someone tried to create his story, but science and more education and DNA is now uncovering all these stories that we've been told over the years. So yeah, there's a lot of dismantling going on. But I do want to celebrate the black and brown people in the country, and I think we need to tell those stories more. But I definitely think we need to tell the uncomfortable ones as well. So like you said, we don't repeat them in the future.
Yeah, I think that's the way we have to go. I think it's about finding a balance, Donna.
Yeah.
It's like what I usually use as an antidote in order to understand the trajectory in which Black history, or brown history should be propagated, is looking at it from three perspectives, in which Orlando Patterson, who's a Jamaican sociologist, says. He says there are three elements in how Black history is taught within the Western world. There's a catastrophic, which looks at colonization in ancient times right up to the modern. Survivalists, those people who were brought over to the so-called New World, and they were tortured, and those darker skinned people had to resist against oppression, subjugation and all these other type of things. But the one which is left out of that, which is taught to a lesser degree, which is taken up by Afrocentrics and people of Black pride, etc., is a contributionism perspective.
Yes.
Culture, science and mathematics, building, interactive mechanisms amongst people, and all these other sort of things, which the British or the Western people like to call civilization. And I think that piece needs to be in there, rather just leaving us into the room of colonization and enslavement. Let's look at the contribution, because before Europeans came upon the scene, that's when they learned their mathematics, their scripts in order to write, how to speak, how to communicate, government, legal system, judicial system, the educational system, religious systems, relationships between males and females, elements of entertainment. All of that they learned from the darker races before they came in on the scene. So I think if we can focus on that, because the thing is, what they're pushing now is STEM. And the thing is, we really want our children to become comfortable with these disciplines, that they can see themselves as entrepreneurs, as scientists, as mathematicians.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
And they need to see people who are in those positions as their teachers, so they can see that reflection.
Yes.
Not something which we just talk about just to feel good, but we don't see those individuals. And that's what's needed. And not just for our children, for the children of white children as well, because they've been made to believe that they created everything. They do.
Yeah,
they really believe that.
No, you're right. Yeah, definitely. What do you think then? you know, moving forward with the new curriculum, is it just for high school children or is it for juniors as well? Do you know?
It's going to be through the whole schooling system. As
Oh,
far as I
brilliant.
understand it and know, it's through the whole schooling system.
Fantastic.
So this is the opportunity now for most people now who are thinking of maybe going into teaching. We need authors now. We need people who are scientists, to write things for children so they can see themselves reflected in biology as inventors or innovators.
Yes.
In chemistry and physics, in mathematics, engineering, and all these other type of things. So they know from a very young age that not only they can see themselves doing it, that they can see themselves doing it. To establish it for themselves and the next generation without teachers pervasively trying to tell them, well, just get into entertainment, music, sports, and drama, which is the narrative which they've pushed us in since we've been making a lot of money for them on the athletic fields or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. It's we're good for entertainment, but anything else is just stay in your lane, isn't it, and entertain us. Well, it's absolutely fascinating speaking to you, and you're a man of extreme talent and academic achievements, and you were definitely the perfect person to be at that table to have a input in the new curriculum. And I just feel sorry that England hasn't reached the level of intelligence that Wales has, because they are not introducing their new curriculum into their system at the moment, which is really sad, but hopefully they'll follow suit in the future. So what's next for you then, Abu-Bakr?
What's next for me now is I'm trying to write a few books now. I haven't been the best of writers in the past. I've been more of a speaker. So I'm trying to put pen to paper or fingertips to keyboards and trying to develop, different forms of information that I've developed over the years and different forms of understanding, such as race and genetics. I was the first one to run a race and genetics course, so people can be able to dot their lineage and how that historical, linear perspective comes into fruition. Looking at things from a historical perspective, mathematical, scientific, but also looking at things from a social level as well, because not all of us are going to be academics. So looking at how we could be entrepreneurs, how we could be consultants, psychotherapists, sociologists, economists. We need all these different types of people. So what my job is now is to cultivate the minds and the hearts of the next generation. If I can study all these disciplines and become pretty competent and confident in them, I don't see what they can do 2 or 3 themselves and become pioneers. Because the thing is that when you look at the exception and the rule, if we are the exception, then we can be very exceptional. That's what makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, it's been really great to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to this going out. I think people need to, they've seen in the news that there was a new report released by the government about the curriculum, but I don't think people understand the work and that's been going into it and the background into it. So hopefully people will have a little look at that report and get their head around what's happening for their future for their children in schools. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Okay. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
And have a good day.
Thank you. And you too.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.